your cloud,
All right.
just not to YouTube.
See what happens.
Okay, so we're not able to live stream to YouTube, but I'll upload this. So we just did roll call for those of you who couldn't hear us because we were on mute. Let me turn our camera on. So this is everybody here. So anyone here with the city of Fort Bragg?
We can't hear her though. She just talked.
She waved.
She waved and said, I'm here.
Jeanette is here. I don't know if we can hear you. I don't know if it's a computer issue. It might be, hold on.
Awesome.
Speak again, Jeanette. Just anything. No, we need to hear your voice. Can you try to speak again? I turned the volume up.
You're on mute now. There you go.
But yeah.
Yeah, we can't hear you. And I think it's on your end this time. So we have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum in the room or quorum?
We have a quorum in the room.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to public comment that we have a quorum. Is there any public comment that you received, Veronica?
I received no advanced public comment.
Is there any public comment on topics that are not on the agenda in the room or on Zoom? Seeing no public comment, we're gonna move on to the recommended action of approving the minutes from October 16th, 2023 membership meeting. Is there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If there's no additions or corrections to the minutes, we'll need a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We'll wait till Veronica gets back over to her desk.
So just really quick, we have some COC members from the Northern Circle Indian Housing Authority who have joined us. You guys are welcome to find a seat at the table. We got room over here. There's a couple seats over there or wherever you're
I
comfortable.
want to pay attention first.
Okay. Yes.
We're getting ourselves into.
Okay. But I will change.
Take that step.
Okay, we have a first and a second, no discussion, so we need a roll call, Veronica, when you get a second.
Okay. When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain for the motion on the table for the minutes. Faith Dayton,
Yes.
Teresa DeSimone,
Yes.
Jacqueline Williams.
Yes.
Paul Davis.
Yes.
Blythe Post.
Yes.
Amanda Archer.
Abstain.
Judy Albert.
Yes.
Sage Wolf.
I'm gonna let Joanne vote because she was here and I wasn't.
Joanne is here.
Yes.
Dan McIntyre.
Yes.
Will Van Zandt.
Yes.
Hannah or Jeanette Ornelas. Oh, we can't hear you. Uh-oh. Thumbs up, down, or sideways for abstain? Up. Okay. And Priest Martinez,
Here,
would you like, do you want to abstain
I
from?
have to abstain, yes.
Okay, we'll put you as abstain. All right, motion approved.
Thank you. We're gonna move on to updates from local jurisdictions, County of Mendocino, Karen and Megan. It's on Megan, since Karen's not here.
I can't think of any meaningful update from the county. I'm coming up with nothing, so I don't think we have any significant updates. Things are going well. And any questions for the county? No? Okay. I think we're good. Veronica, if you can think of anything that's relevant to update the board on?
211's trying. I don't know if you want to open that one.
Probably not ready to open that can of worms, but maybe that would be a good agenda item for later on. So I will give the board an update on 211 in the future. There are some changes happening, possibly. Yes.
Okay, thank you. City of Ukiah. Most somebody here from the city of Ukiah, I don't think. I'll move on to city of Fort Bragg if Janelle has her sound fixed.
Can you hear me now?
I'm very excited.
For an update, I don't think I have anything.
Thank you. City of Point Arena, is anybody from City of Point Arena? I don't see anybody. Any other local jurisdictions that are here that I missed? All right, if not, we're gonna move on to standing committees. I do not believe we have a strategic planning committee meeting or, report. Shelters and solutions. Veronica, need you chair, is that an old note or is that a new note?
That is an old note. I forgot to take it off from last time. My apologies. Nicholas Candidate is the chair. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting. I know the plan was for Buffy Varasa with Mendocino County Jail to attend. Judy, do you know if that what happened?
Yeah, that did happen.
Could you guys give us a review? Because I have no idea what happened. Or just check in.
I mean, she basically talked about some of this, a lot of just about the struggles of what to do with people who then get released from the jail in terms of what kind of opportunities they really have in terms of like housing and keeping them clean and sober and finding them a place to live, and that it's a real struggle. It's just, it was a lot about, the multiple barriers in place from jail and not having very many options. But it was a very good, presentation. I actually really appreciated it.
It wasn't just hearing the discharge planning barriers, or not knowing when people are gonna be released, so, figuring out how to have a partner there ready to take someone in.
Right.
Is in itself a huge challenge.
Any questions? Well,
How do we jump on that committee or board? How do we be a part of that? Because that's definitely needed in every demographic, so.
So I'll
That's one
invite
of our
you.
main concerns for us over at Northern Circle.
There's gonna be one tomorrow, isn't
So there is
Wednesday.
supposed to be scheduled one this week, but Nick emailed me saying that the team had wanted to cancel. And I wasn't aware of that, so I was gonna ask him today, but he's not here, what we wanted
The
to
Shelter
do.
and Solutions Committee wanted to cancel.
And just meet every other month and not meet in January.
I think what happened is it felt like there was a scheduling mishap somehow. Because not everybody you weren't available.
Right.
I think that it seemed like there was some kind of a consensus that we were supposed to meet in February, but somehow it got put out that we met, or, instead in December. And then we'd agree that we'd meet only once every 2 months. So I think there was some discussion about that.
I think we were supposed to meet every other month.
Yeah.
We were not supposed to meet in December.
Exactly,
And instead we were supposed to meet in January.
Right.
So that was the discussion that was happening.
right,
And that's the Shelter and Solutions meeting.
yes,
So, because there is the meeting Buffy holds is, I think, this Thursday.
What was that?
That's a different meeting.
The
Yes, that's a
reentry
different
collaborative.
meeting.
Oh, yeah.
But Veronica, please, I think you can just say I'd like to be on the committee. I don't.
yes.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Add you to the invitation.
So Veronica will add you to the invites and then
Okay.
you'll be.
So then you'll find out and email people whatever's happening about Wednesday.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank
we
you.
will. And it is scheduled for this Wednesday at 1 to 2:30
Okay.
here not in this room, though, in the room in the middle part of this building, in the Shasta Conference Room at 1 o'clock.
That's why I was confused, because it
Right.
was on my calendar.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you had an accidental meeting in December, but you
Yes.
actually wanted.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
The right schedule in January.
Yes, thank you, Megan.
I had asked for the December meeting because of the non-congregate shelter policy need and for the board assignment. But I don't think it,
That didn't make it discussed.
okay,
No.
okay.
Talk about it.
Is there any other questions for the committee? All right, coordinated entry discharge planning for Erica.
That committee is going very well. Because we've been having some trouble, not with the quorum, but we haven't really needed to do any action items a lot. The committee has determined that it's gonna have an official in-person committee meeting quarterly. And then the 2 months that are off will be virtual work groups. So we'll still be meeting, we just won't be, and it'll still be open to the public, it just won't be an official committee meeting. Just so that we don't have to have an in-person quorum 12 times a year, it's only 4 times a year. We're always gonna have that committee available virtually because our coordinated entry list management agency, Nutmeg Consulting, is out of Connecticut. And so the only way they can contribute and participate is virtually. So it just made sense. We'll be meeting in January for an official meeting, and we will be presenting some changes to the coordinated entry policies and procedures. It incorporates a transfer policy for persons who were chronically homeless at the time of rapid rehousing placement, so that they can be transferred to permanent supportive housing and still retain that homeless status. We just had to have a policy on it. There's some other minor changes. And I think we're going to be discussing the prioritization a little bit because the COVID health order has well been expired. And we're using a prioritization from that. It's not necessarily COVID driven, but it's not actually in our policies and procedures. So we're going to be discussing that as well. I think that's enough.
Any questions for Veronica? Thank you. Membership committee, I don't think we have any.
We haven't met, but I have been making progress on that work behind the scenes with the board reconfiguration, restructuring. So I've been doing some updating and things like that. So later in the meeting, we'll be looking at our current board composition with term dates and discussing what to do with some of the seats.
Any questions on the membership committee? Okay, we'll move on to HMIS, performance measurements. I is not here.
I was out sick today, but that committee is going well. Something happened and I wasn't able to attend that meeting either. Amy, do you recall anything that occurred at the last HMIS committee meeting?
I do not. Nothing that jumped out. I know the LSA, we're working through the LSA. Our due date is the 17th. And so we've got a couple of uploads going on that right now.
Yes.
And I think that was the only major thing.
Yeah, doing, and Aya has it down to one error that she knows how she's gonna fix. And I think it's down to 14 warnings that have explanations and notes that are required. But sometimes the way you record your data doesn't jive all the way with the way HUD wants it done. Sometimes even HUD's expectations can't be met with the data. So that's why they do the warnings, because they're not a big deal and they understand them. And so we're in a really good shape this year. The data quality was a lot.
Any questions from the board? Not hearing, we'll move on to ad hoc committee report. About point in time, the recommended time of the count. Veronica, I assume you need this as a motion?
Yes, so the ad hoc committee is going well and has identified the night of Tuesday, January the 23rd, 2024, to hold the pit count. The board has to, well, the membership needs to formally adopt extend that date and approve it. And so I'm happy to answer other questions about how it's going, but that's the primary purpose of this update.
Okay. Are any questions for Veronica before we call for a motion?
Does each individual county choose the day of the count?
Yes, each COC determines, HUD just requires it be held in the last 10 nights of January. I forgot to note that I do have some handouts over here on the table, and these are also posted online. I have a volunteer recruitment flyer as well as the press release in both English and in Spanish. So those are over there. I've got lots of copies. Take as many as you'd like. Hand them out. We need volunteers. You know, there was one other thing I forgot that the committee asked us to do. I almost forgot. So the committee, we're struggling with getting volunteers as we do every year. And they came up with the idea and they request that each COC member organization commit 2 volunteers to participate in the count from their staff. And that they also bring 1 person with lived experience if possible, possible client that you may be working with, somebody in the past, an advocate who has experienced homelessness in the last 7 years. But that's the request from the ad hoc committee. And the committee even suggested we may recommended adding it to the governance charter as a condition of membership. So that's not on the table today for the governance charter, but that's how strongly they felt about it. And I have to agree that, you know, we're all responsible to make sure it happens. It's the COC's responsibility. So any thoughts on that? Any feedback? Anybody disagree?
I think if the language in the governance charter, I mean, could be something along, it's the expectation. I mean, I don't know how we're gonna enforce it, but the expectation of that a member, you know, does their best effort to provide 2 volunteers in that morning they account. But I don't know what we don't have any sticks. They don't. But I do think if we start with that expectation, that's a good idea.
I would say our stick probably went out, I mean, we're not historically very good at following through with this thing, but not having a membership on the COC board. Like it being a condition of being a voting member would be the only thing we could really hold it to. I'm not sure if we would want to tie it to that. I don't have an opinion right now, but
Right.
I think it's a good, I think in general, like I would be in support of it being a expectation or a like part of participation in the COC board includes that as well as.
Participation in committees, like the things that we've asked members to do, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the only question would be if that puts any of our smaller organizations
Yeah.
at a disadvantage. So that would be my only consideration, because it's one thing for Adventist Health to like come up, because I have 7 volunteers and I can sell them off to other organizations. But I think with other smaller organizations, that's my only consideration.
I agree with that little tiny organization, it might. And we
For
don't want to
future,
dissuade people from participating.
Yeah, it's like I was thinking of like the family resource centers or whoever else. But I generally think that's probably something that can be easily accommodated.
So, you know, my only question would be nice to go the expectation of the time commitment, et cetera, you know, because, you know, I mean, I felt sort of guilty that I haven't done it, but it also just ties in with when all of our reports are due for the, you know, and everything like that. It's just, it's like bad timing and it seems like, but so part of that would be helpful, just to know like how long.
Ask a separate question about
or more about the hick, maybe, I don't know if it's pit or hick, what regardless.
It's the same thing. They're together, but
For, oh, and also Joanna Ellison has her hand up that I don't wanna talk over.
oh,
Joanna's there.
hi, Joanne.
Hi there. I just wanted to add to that suggestion. And I do support that it's a recommendation because there are agencies that will find challenges and barriers at the time of pit count to get volunteers to come, maybe leave work or something they're gonna have to plan in advance to try and get those people to participate. So I would like our language to be supportive and understanding, but also if we could perhaps provide some sort of supports, or some kind of discussion that can be held with people that are having challenges. Because if you make it a recommendation or a requirement, then we would have to have some kind of follow-up if they didn't follow it. So I really appreciate the words of recommendation. So that's the feedback that I wanted to share around that, knowing that it can be a challenge for some people to get volunteers to come out and do that work.
Sage.
For shelters, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing like physical things that use HMIS for tracking who's in the shelter. I know we've used that in the pit count, I think. The entries, am I right? Okay.
We've been pulling out of HMIS, yeah, like these.
We've been having some challenges on our end, not in terms of HMIS, but just in terms of timely entry. We're working on some solutions to get it addressed and figure it out. And I want to be able to just support. I'm going to be on vacation for 2 weeks, and before I leave, I want to make sure that they have what they need to get everything in. Is there a date that you like HMIS projects need to reflect the reality of the pit count night for you to be able to capture that data for your,
Probably in March.
okay, we'll have it much before then. Okay. But I will give them an expectation that's maybe sooner than that, but
Yes, we want to know where people are.
Yeah.
And so it's very important to make sure you've gathered your HMIS data for everybody you serve that night. So that when we go to run the HIC and the PIT out of our HMIS, it will export accurate information. And so really the guidance to all of our sheltered projects is do what you always do. Just don't skip anybody. And we'll work back with you from there.
Okay.
With our domestic violence partners, we have a separate, it's provided by Simtech, and it's an Excel workbook that's programmed to where the VSP can pop in all of the information that's required by HUD, with their client names and dates of birth and all of that stuff, to where it's what they normally capture. And then the Excel workbook will process that information and pop out three PDFs of the data that we need to input to report to HUD. We never get a single client name, birth date, we get an age range. So it's very, very de-identified and protected. So if you guys have any clients, we'll do that with you.
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't, most of the time you don't.
We likely have,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
unless something.
yeah. So that's our guidance to our shelter folks, is just do what you normally do and just make sure you have thorough data quality.
I just want to make sure if it was like the next day that they need to have everything, then I need to plan for that. If we're running about a week behind right now.
Right, when we did the paper ones,
Yeah.
it was essential because there were additional questions that we couldn't gather out of HMIS. It was, sometimes they would leave and you didn't do the intake and you missed them.
Yeah.
But now that we have really good coverage in our HMIS, we have 100% HMIS coverage for our non-VSP emergency shelters. That's like unheard of. So, yeah. Good, thank you for checking.
Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. I need a motion to
I'll make a motion to authorize the 2024 pit hit count to be held on the night of January 23rd this year, 2024.
And is there a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Any public input? Roll call, Veronica?
When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain to the motion on the table. Faith Dayton,
Yes.
Teresa De Simone,
That's,
Jacqueline Williams.
yes.
Joanna Olson,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Blythe Post,
Yes.
Amanda Archer,
Yes.
Judy Albert,
Yes.
Sage or Joanne,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Hannah, no, Jeanette Ornelas,
Yes.
and Priest Martinez.
Yes.
Motion approved unanimously.
Okay, we're gonna move down to board public policy and governance. First thing we have in your guys, everybody's packet, there's a schedule for the COC board meetings. And this year, 2024. And as you note, all the stuff that's highlighted in yellow are not on the normal date due to holidays. We just need a motion to approve and authorize this report. Are you trying to find it, Veronica?
I'm trying to find the next one. We're okay.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, thank you, Sage. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Judy. Any discussions? Roll call, please.
Again, when I say yes, no, or abstain, when I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain. Faith Dayton,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Sage or Joanne,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
Will, Jeanette,
Yes.
Priest.
Yes.
Motion approved unanimously.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next topic, and I'm gonna do my best not to confuse everybody. So. Tell me when you're ready, Veronica.
You want up all the agendas? 'Cause I don't think we showed you where they were.
No, they're probably
Yeah, they're right
there.
there, yeah. I saw you picking up your Dale's shoulder.
Yeah, you feel free to grab my picture.
I didn't want him to miss the most of what you're about to get.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's not on the packet. Yeah, the rest of the packet.
On each screen. Oh.
All right, so first of all, there's a couple things I missed last year, and I'll take responsibility for this. So if anybody wants to complain about the Brown Act, they can come yell at me, and I will gladly listen to them on the problem I just messed up. So there's 3 seats that actually expired in May of 2023. Now, that's not from the general membership side of things, but they expired from being on the board. So those 3 seats are organization, Mendocino Community Health Clinics representing healthcare, Mendocino County Office of Education, and Redwood Community Services. So you guys all expired technically in May of 2023.
Great.
Which, no, you don't get that away.
Still a member, you still got
No
to.
members, so you get to sit. But it does preclude you from voting in the next 2 meetings until we get to the general member meeting on April. Which I probably should have brought this up when we did the schedule. Are we required to do these on the quarters?
Huh?
The membership?
The membership meetings?
That's what's in our governance charter. We can change
Can
that.
we add another?
Absolutely, we can add one anytime. We just can't take them away.
Okay, well, when we get done with this discussion, we are probably gonna add one in March.
Okay.
And I'll explain why in a minute. So until we have that general membership meeting again, those 3 seats cannot vote. So if there's any complaints, issues, please send them my direction. They have my email me, I'll talk to any of them. So in theory, we've discussed this over and over in the committee meeting. I know Judy sat in this committee meeting, and we've kind of talked this over, and I want to thank Veronica for helping me get the notes changed in the Word document, because like normal, I got behind and did not get my side done besides scribbling on it on my desk. Right now, the board has, I think, 18 seats.
So I have hard copies of this Megan's gonna pass.
Okay. Did everyone but me get them already? Okay, I'm gonna pass them around. There, it's a little hard to see on the screen.
There's 17 seats, excuse me, not 18. Well, so change that.
I'll scroll down a little bit past the text.
All right.
You want to pass?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
You want to-
So I actually, let me, can I just pause for a second? So what we just handed out is there's 2 sides to this sheet. One is the current board structure. And the other one is the draft, that says draft, is the board structure that the board has discussed, and we're getting close.
All right, so originally there was 19 seats on the board. Not all of them are currently filled. There's quite a few vacant seats. The new configuration that we've talked about, and the board has given a verbal okay to move forward with presenting back to the governance board, the general membership board, is a board that consists of 12 seats. 4 that do not, okay, when I say do not rotate, I mean that the positions, the representative group categories don't rotate. Doesn't mean the people in those representative group categories don't themselves rotate, right? So for example, housing authority is not always guaranteed to be CDC. It could be any housing authority that works in Vincent County. That makes sense? Okay. So the 4 top seats would not rotate out. And then that representative groups below would rotate out on the applicable terms that come up. And when I say applicable terms, right now, if we look at the sheet that came with the board, this sheet. Nobody can see it on the screen, but the sheet that shows the term end dates, we have a ton of terms coming up due in March. And then we have the 3 that I missed in May of last year. We have, I think, 10 seats coming up. Yeah, we have 10 seats coming up in March, or 7 coming up in March, 3 I missed. So 10 in total that are coming up. So what we have to finalize is how we're going to make the changes to this cognitive group of 12. My suggestion, and what I've done before in other boards that I've been the chair on, is to get these aligned. We would elect 8 seats. We would set another meeting in March. Because I can't guarantee we're gonna get those changes done by February. So we'll set another meeting for March for our general membership meeting. And at that meeting, we would hold elections for 8 and fill 8 seats. Of those 8 seats, we would fill 1 seat after the election is done. This would be random. 1 seat would fill a 1-year term. Because at the end, what we want to have is we want to have 4 seats expire every year. So that there's basically every year we elect 4 people. Or 4 groups.
Continuity.
We have continuity and we have set election schedules, right? So one would expire in August of 2025 to expire with the other group that's in 2025. 3 would expire in April of 2026. And then 4 would expire in April of 2027. And that corresponds with our normal quarterly meetings we have for the general membership. Right, that doesn't account for any special meetings we have, but it goes to back to the general one. The general meeting. Now, say for example, this year was in 2025 and the terms expire in August. Typically, we have our meetings in July. We didn't meet a quorum that year. That's why we went to August. They would just get it reelected in July. This would get us on a 3-year cycle, so where we don't lose a bunch of board members in 1 year. Does that make sense? Any questions on that thought process?
So when these seats become available in March, and then with our 3 seats that have already expired, do we have an inclination for what nominations of representative group seats that will be filled at that time?
That's an open, that nomination process is just open. It's not like we're gonna nominate only for certain seats.
Okay,
If we have 10 nominations, it would just be the top 8 vote getters.
Okay.
Of those 10.
Well, I think though, Blythe, like a seat for individuals with serious mental illness would still be filled because Tapestry is in that seat until 2026.
right, but so my question is, so say like for my position, right, an organization serving the needs of families with children, like who else would be nominated for that position? Like if I'm no longer on the board for that particular 3 cycle or 1-year cycle, how would we go back through to when would that rotation come back? I guess is my question.
I think that we're doing 2 things at once. We're tidying up all the expired terms, but we're also shifting to the new process in which there is no designated seat for schools.
They're in the
So
school district, not in the.
it's one of the representative ones, it's not designated.
Right.
So as Dan explained, the top 4 on this list are quote unquote, I'm gonna call them designated seats. They are
Permanent or
The categories.
required.
designated.
The categories are designated, they're not permanent.
Yeah.
Whoever sits in them can rotate on the 3-year cycle.
They're designated as opposed to representative group seats. So, and then the representative group seats, there's like, I don't know, there's 20 options here.
And it's not and I'm sure we don't have a complete comprehensive list.
Yeah.
Like there's probably more.
We have other relevant organizations.
Okay, so I did my typical job description, other duties as a site.
Yeah.
I think what that means is it kind of changes our role. We're not here to represent just the faction that we've been representing in the past. We have to all wear a little bit broader hats if you end up being one of these representatives.
To a
Right.
point, yeah.
So to your question, so if somebody plays the role you've played, whoever plays that in the future will have kind of their own little mini contact network, I would think.
Or theoretically, you could have nobody who's representing an organization with families with children.
Right.
Yeah. So that is something.
Not
to
all of these, right,
That's
not
something
all
to
of these will be
consider.
represented.
Right.
We know that already.
And the other thing too is there would not be more than one representative from an organization.
Right.
You have somebody coming in, Veronica?
Thank you.
I think, I guess we're just putting all the stuff out at once. Dan, if at the March meeting we fill the 8 seats, before that, we actually have to make the official governance charter changes.
Yes.
Because they haven't been made yet. So
Yes.
order wise, that would be important.
Order-wise, we would have to make the governance charter changes. We would have to approve those as an organization. And then hold the election, we can hold the election the same week after we approve the changes.
We've done that.
Which currents, I'm sorry, the ones that expired in May and the ones that are, you have it listed who's expired and. Sorry, never mind. Got it.
Well, there's 3 at the bottom that expired in May of last year. The 3 that expired in March.
You
We can
have it
do
written out, I don't, yeah, I.
We can do it 2 ways. We can hold a meeting in March. To approve the governance charter changes and then follow up with elections the next month or in April. But that leaves 2 months where we're short 3 board seats. Well, not.
So we'll have a tiny board.
Or we approve the changes in one meeting and then we hold the elections that same meeting.
That same day. Since we're all kind of knowing what we're doing, that might be possible.
The March meeting would be full membership, so the only meeting that would have a smaller board is February.
And we'd only be missing those 3 members. We get to still have our March people.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is we could do the elections on the same day we approve the charter, we just approve government charter first, then hold the elections.
Yep.
Or we do the government charter in one meeting and then hold the elections the following. That's kind of up to,
Because April is a full membership meeting as well.
and April would fall, the election cycle would then fall. Because if we don't do it in April, if we don't do the elections in April, we're gonna fall 1 month short.
Right.
Come
The terms.
the 2027 term.
Yeah.
It's not a matter if we go long, if we don't meet a quorum and we go long, that's fine, because we can elect early. But it does matter if we come up short. So if we elect in March, actually, we can't do that. We have to elect in April.
Okay.
So March, you're suggesting that March, we switch to a membership meeting. We approve the governance language changes.
Yep.
And that'll give time.
And then we
for
do nominations.
Open nominations for the whole month.
Correct.
And
And
then,
we elect in April, that puts us on the same cycle. It doesn't ever hurt us to go long, like if we come to April 2027, we don't have a quorum and we push it a month and we do elections, that's fine. It's when we come up short, that would be an issue.
To clarify, so in March, the general membership. Okay,
What
so
approved?
it is the we, not the
Yeah.
board, but the general membership. Okay. We would be voting on the seat for the tribal government or entity.
No, we would be voting on the changes, we would be voting on the page 22 of this, the changes of the board configuration, the 12-seated one. Plus the other wordy changes in the governance charter. There's
A lot.
a lot of other word changes that talk about elections in the governance charter.
Yeah,
So we'd be voting on those changes
in
in
March.
March,
and then we'd be voting on new board seats
in
in
April.
April.
You'll have a whole set
Okay.
of people who won't be able to vote in April, everyone who.
No, and
No, it's a full membership.
it's a full
meeting.
membership.
We got just,
so-
okay.
The only
So then
one
in
in
April,
April.
now would then be voting on
Got it.
the seat. In April, we'd be voting on the tribal government or entity seat, the housing authority seat, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6
Well,
representative seats.
I think there's a little bit of a twist on that. So the tribal government entity seat, yes, we'd be voting on that because it's a new seat.
Mhm.
The housing authority seat, actually, that term doesn't end. It just happens to be. Or
It
no,
doesn't.
it did. It did. Okay, sorry.
It expires in
The
March.
housing developer seat is not.
Yeah, not that one, the housing authority seat.
Right.
We'd be voting.
We would be
And then-
voting on a total of 8 seats.
And I'm just
Well,
wanting to
plus these
identify which seats that I.
We'd be voting on all of them except for the housing developer and property manager
An individual with lived experience.
and individual lived experience.
Which you have to deal with.
Well, that's not exactly true. It is a little bit complicated because two people with existing open terms, Adventist Health and Tapestry, need to finish out their terms.
Yeah,
So
they would still be under the representative group seat.
But they don't need to revote and I don't.
No, they don't need to. So there's 1, 2, 3,
We have
4,
8,
5,
we have
6,
the 8
7,
seats, we
8
have 8
representative
seats we have to fill in April.
So 2 standing seats and 6
Yes,
representative seats.
yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
So the housing developer or property manager is filled.
And not overdue. Or like not.
And 2 representative group seats are filled and not expiring.
Right, I'm sorry, Stacey, I'm following now.
And then the individual with lived experiences in theory filled
By Aaliyah.
in theory.
Yeah.
But
But we can also take the opportunity to see if she wants to continue in that role or solicit additional.
Yeah.
appointments if we can.
okay,
And then after the elections are done, we would set them on the cycle so that.
Yeah.
Every year we're doing 4.
It'll be all tidy for a little while until.
Well, it'll be
until
tidy,
it gets-
it'll be tidy until, because then the other caveat in the board cycle is say I step down, right? And I have 2 years left on my term. Then whoever gets reelected to that seat or reelected to a seat fills the time left in that term.
Yeah, they don't
They
start
don't
fresh.
start a new fresh 4-year cycle.
yeah.
They just fill the existing term
Yeah.
their seats is filled. That makes sense? And then that way we never get off of we never rotate out more than 4 people, 4 groups or 4 organizations at one time.
And then I just also want to make a change, like our executive director is no longer Michelle Hutchins. We have a new superintendent, so can I just email you with that?
Yes, please do. I didn't know.
Any questions on this? Comments? Do you think I'm insane?
One other thing that Megan and I were thinking about when we were looking at this the new draft. Should we make housing developer or property manager a representative group instead of a dedicated seat? Because the thought process behind keeping the housing, having it, like a whole bunch of dedicated seats and like 3 or 4. But we did decide against that and we expanded it. So I wanted to get your guys' feel on that thought. Faith?
I have a question. Is there a subcommittee that's determining that? Because I think there might be some interested.
We
groups.
had multitudes of.
Lots and lots and lots of.
Oh, that's why I just
Yeah.
wasn't around yet. Okay.
Yeah, it was a long conversation.
That's why, because I think.
2021 down here.
Oh, yeah.
We started it in 2021.
That's why I'm so clueless to it.
That's
Okay.
what this version, the original.
But we have talked about at least a year. So yeah, Sage wants to give some
Yeah.
context.
Some context and where the conversation kind of circled around in terms of that seat. Had a similar conversation around the lawn.
Yeah.
Pre that seat being designated, the COC was always service provider heavy. And not getting buy-in from property developers. And this is a housing, we want housing. And if we're just a whole bunch of service providers talking to each other about how much we want housing, we're gonna be spinning our wheels a lot. And so we had really pushed towards having that housing developer represented here. And if we don't name it, I just would not want us to go back to being just service providers talking about how horrible it is to not have housing, because that just didn't, yeah.
I guess my concern with that would be if our CHDC ever stepped down, I don't know if we'd be able to find another housing property manager that would be interested in being on this.
And I'd hear that and I feel the same, like it's the lived experience, like we've been very unsuccessful at getting somebody with lived experience to consistently come. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not worth it to designate that that's important.
I even tried to eliminate myself if it.
I know, I just wanted to bring it up one last
Yeah, and
time.
Sage, that's a good, I was trying to remember. I do, but I think, not that we want to change the governance charter all the time, but we can try this, we did talk about it for a year, so we could try this out, and if it's vacant persistently, we might have to readdress it, right?
Okay.
We talked it was a good talk to add housing developer to the board seats, but hate to see, like it was, yeah. And since then, we very consistently have had a housing developer who's in the room.
Great.
I mean, I think it's a really good point, Sage. I mean, this is about housing and we, that should be the primary focus.
Yeah.
And so it does emphasize that theme. Makes sense.
I can't see Zoom. Well, I can see. Is there any questions on Zoom?
No hands up.
So if I remember correctly, in some of our past discussions, it also was the idea is that there would be a much larger expanded general membership.
Yes, that's.
And so that there would also be more work being done in committees that
was
would
the
be
goal.
active.
Yeah, that's the goal.
And, what I'm hearing, the timeline of, and I know that this has been delayed a long time because you guys made this plan in like 3 years ago. But I think it sounds very rushed myself in terms of the people who leave and the people who come on, and will there be enough people to replace them? It sounds a little hurried, like this, I understand perhaps that it seems like this has been a long time coming. And I might be completely wrong on this, but to suddenly get 8 new members, I mean, I presume Veronica's gonna still be here, Megan's gonna still be.
Well, we're gonna get, unfortunately, we're gonna get 10, if we don't change this, we're gonna get 10 new people.
I think the other thing is, Judy, I would be surprised if those 8 new members are not.
Right, I don't know. I don't think.
Imagine.
Oh, okay, all right, well, that's.
You were welcome to continue to be.
Thank you, Megan, that's what I was not I was thinking goodbye, all you guys.
There's 10 seats up.
We can't do rating and ranking with us.
There's 10 seats up.
have 9, so we currently have 9 seats. I'm just gonna make the assumption and predict the future that the CDC is the housing authority that's gonna apply for the housing authority seat, and we're probably not gonna get another one that applies. I don't think there is.
The only other one would be a tribal one.
A tribal.
That's already got it.
But we have a tribal representative, so
Yeah,
it could go either way.
But there's 10 seats.
predict the future there.
Okay, okay.
There's 6 seats
I
for
wasn't thinking.
general
Yeah.
members for general representatives, there's 6 seats that would come open under this new model. There's 9 organizations that have had seats whose board membership would be coming up they need to then apply to fill one of those 6 seats. So it more likely is that we're gonna have some competition between 9 agencies going for 6 seats. And then as a CSC, how does the general membership figure out which
I
3
think that's-
agencies to disappoint?
I think that's that's sort of like haunting me in the back of my mind because we haven't shrunk before. So we haven't typically had like a battle for seats.
Yeah.
So I am interested in seeing.
I mean, and looking at this, like of the 9 agencies that there's one of them hasn't been considered, well, anyway,
We would just do it like,
it's just gonna be.
it's
by
gonna
the
take a
vote.
while to count them, you just vote for 6.
Yeah,
I mean, I can say right now, I don't know if I'll run as a veteran. I'm happy to be just a member and not a board member, you know, just to reduce.
So there's one open up.
I don't want the responsibility. I'm happy, when there's a board seat representing veterans, that's when I'm like, oh, well, I should probably be that. But if there's no board seat representing veterans, I'm happy to be just a member.
I think we may find some people are happy to step back and be members,
right.
but I do think that we're not gonna have 6 brand new people. I think that would be
Okay.
disappointing and.
And I
That was
think
just my
Yeah.
discussion.
Unfortunately, that's kind of where we set ourselves up with how the election cycle went. Now, right, is we have so many coming up in March. We have 2, 4, 6, we have 7 coming up in
I
March
know.
alone. And that could be, I found that to be detrimental to boards in the past.
If they just have that.
That's that rapid.
That's what I was trying to avoid. I was just picturing all these new people suddenly. coming.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this year it's gonna be weird because like, you're gonna have one, that's a 1, you have 3 that get back on that cycle.
Mhm.
But once we set that and then follow the precedent of like they finish out the term,
Mhm.
you'll always have 4 on the cycle.
Right.
Cause otherwise it would be bad.
Okay.
It would be bad. Cause you're right. I mean, you don't want all that historical knowledge. Let's get them and walk out of that. I had one board, the whole entire board turned over and I had 1 returning member.
Yeah. I think,
Over, that's awful.
That's bad.
yeah, I think, in the interest of transparency, Veronica just reminded me of something that I had neglected to fully resolve. In this new model, local government does not have a designated seat. I have not fully discussed that with, our department head. At the same time, this is an independent body, the COC is, so I'm just putting that out there as like an FYI for now.
But they get
It's
put
not
under other
I
eligible
know,
areas.
but it's not a designated seat, and I'm reluctant to reopen the designated seat. We
Are you in the
spent a
top
year,
4?
yes, we
No.
spent a
I
long
was also
time.
curious about law enforcement.
They were,
We also talked about that for like a year, and so.
Veronica, you have another person to admit.
I think, but I think the schedule you have, although it feels a little bit rushed to Judy, but maybe not as much now that you realize it won't be brand new. I think in the next month, we'll have time to make sure that people who need to be informed are informed and see how strongly they feel. Before we bring back the,
We were supposed to
Language
do this.
changes.
We were actually supposed to do this in our meeting today.
yeah,
We were supposed to actually hold the elections today
Mhm.
and do the member
Right.
change, the governor's charter changes in November. But I didn't get it done, so
yeah.
thanks to Veronica, she got some of the typing done. And confirmed that I'm not completely insane. And then, that's why we have to have this we have to have that extra meeting. To approve the changes in March. All my months are already running together and it's not even the second week in January yet.
It is.
Okay, it's not the end of the second week in January. I'm still shocked that I have to work full 5 days.
Okay, so I'm gonna recap where I think we are. Just for my own notes, but to everybody. So our thoughts are that in March, we will switch that to a membership meeting. Full membership meeting. We'll discuss and approve the language changes in the governance charter. And we will open nominations for the seats that are open.
1 tribal government or entity, 1 for housing authority, and 6 representative group seats.
Are open right now. And then we can also
Will-
put it up on an
Will be open as of
Will be
March.
open by the time we vote in April.
Yes.
And then in April, we will elect new members to those seats on staggered terms.
Yes.
And that will be fun.
Well, the staggered terms will come after the elections are done. It's just gonna be a draw.
Oh, okay, so we'll elect 6 people and then we'll draw, and that's for the length of their term.
Yes, that's the only fair way to do it.
Unless there's folks that volunteer, like, hey, I'll take one, or.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
that's fine too, but it's not. The going into the explanation would just be just random.
And because I'm trying, so like, I want to just add a few more twists here. We're gonna need to prepare nomination sheets, and in those nomination sheets, are individuals allowed to check off more than one box that they?
So the way
Qualify
that
for?
it was done previously by using a ballot is not in compliance with the Brown Act. We have to do yes, no, or abstain to this nomination and this nomination and this. nomination.
No, I didn't mean that, but I meant like, so I think that, I
When we
think what's.
apply.
Well, I think what's implied here, but actually I'm not really sure, and we should be really clear in the governance charter. Are we saying that we will only have, so if the person who wins the most votes is a school district representative, what if number 2 is also a school district representative? Are we only gonna have one at a time of the representative groups?
That's gonna make it impossible, because we have multiple people,
Yeah.
agencies that serve people with substance use challenges or medical challenges or elders or. There's no way we could
No,
restrict it like that.
It was
Yeah.
restricted to agency. You couldn't say RCS couldn't have 2 voting seats, or we couldn't have 2 voting.
But when
seats.
RCS checks off their nomination box, did they say we're a shelter and we are a this and we are a that, and that just doesn't matter?
I think it doesn't matter, and it helps the COC be able to see,
We're representing all these areas.
we're representing all these areas, but who's missing also, so that like, okay, if you have one seat open, right, we can look at who's in the other
Okay,
7 seats, and if nobody is on there that represents a school district or something, there's benefit to saying as a COC, like, I'd want to know that as a COC member, so it can influence who I want to bring in to round out the people at the table.
okay,
But I think it's more about sharing the information about what they're representing.
okay, then filling a slot. I was mixing,
Yeah.
because they're not designated seats. That's the whole
No.
point, right? Okay.
And maybe there's a time where the COC board, the general membership is like, we really need to be heavy in this department, this area right now, so I don't know. But
Cause we're not supposed to have designated seats. Like, we don't have to have somebody representing.
We need
You don't
to-
have to.
we need-
No.
No.
Okay. of course,
But again,
that's all I needed.
yeah, because the voting process will be a little different, and I want to make sure that we do it the right way. I think it's true. The ballots have to be public, but if there's 9 people voting, 9 people who submitted nominations, each member can only vote for 6. The number of, you can't vote for all 9, right? That's how we have to do it. 6. And then the top 6 vote getters would be members.
Even if 4 of them are serving
Multiple-
mental health
okay.
issues
Okay.
specifically.
So I was thinking of Fort Street, let's walk through a real life example. So I don't know that Fort Street needs to be one of these members going forward, but because we have the family shelter, I would think we would be actively involved in the shelter.
Solutions committee. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, again, we're struggling because we've been one big gob and we're kind of stratifying it now. And so, I don't, and I think of all the times that we've, had to call Angelica. And I feel like that's the way we probably should have always treated law enforcement, right? There are times that if the committee is working on a particular issue and they need specialized information, it would be nice to know who might, be willing to help us, but they maybe not need to be a governing.
Except for we do have, we actually have a law enforcement organization right now that's very interested in being
Yes,
CSC,
well, then
so we
that
want
would
to be
be
able to
great.
welcome them.
That's right.
Fort Bragg is
That's
pretty
right.
interested,
Mhm.
so,
Right.
but that hasn't always been the case.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So if we all vote to elect them, they can be on the board.
One governance charter change I just thought about. Could we assign 2 board members per
committee.
There's 6 committees and there's 12 board members.
Oh. Oh, sorry. So if you're doing an application, if you're doing a nomination application. Wow. Okay, that, could you list the
Committees on it.
committees on it and say, and so that you're asking the person, the agency that's gonna participate, which committees will you participate on? As a condition of being a board member, you're agreeing to participate in 2 committees, right?
Right, but my concern is that
Then you get everybody.
5 people go on one
Coordinated entry.
committee and then the membership committee.
I think-
disbands.
I don't know.
I think you could say what you're willing to do though, because it is, I mean, in that way, your nomination form is kind of clear. You're helping people understand what the commitment is. If you're nominating, if you're accepting a nomination, if you're nominating yourself to be on the board, this is what it means, including participation on committees.
Could we do
Yeah, then you
that?
might not have enough.
It won't be a problem. You will, and Jackie being like, I don't know,
Yes.
she's what kind of fine.
I wanna go with the rest of this poster for their campaign.
Just a thought that I had.
Yeah.
I kind of want to add it.
I think it's a really good idea. When I was on the HHSA advisory board, you know, we kind of all agreed on focus areas, even though I was just supposed to tell Carrie Brown everything we were working on. We all had kind of a primary area, and like Carrie was really concerned about children. So when you think about that, you can be focused on multiple things at one time. Because the stuff kind of all finally knits together. So it's just new for us. We'll have to figure it out.
Any other questions or discussion? Any thoughts on how it goes?
I was interested to see how it goes on April in terms of the mechanics of it.
Yeah, so it's a real world application. Oh, yeah.
The mechanics are probably gonna be rough the first time.
think they are.
Some ideas. I'm gonna do a total column on each person.
Here's the, I started down this rabbit hole a year ago, and it's the
I think
boards,
it was longer than that.
the boards in the state are all over the place. I mean, literally from like 5 people, there was one board that had like 27 member, a board, 27 member board. Guess which county, out of all the counties, Orange County had a 7-member board.
Oh, and it's a huge.
It's a huge county. They had one for every supervisor district.
Because
Doesn't mean they function the best.
No, I'm not saying, you know, I'm just saying, it was looking at all of them, going them all down, and then some of the smallest counties had some of the largest boards.
Because we're so much more collaborative and rural.
And we all kind of in the middle.
well, a lot of other COCs will have like a bigger group that does all of the policy stuff, and those 7 people, all they do is approve the final version.
Yeah, that was a couple. All right, if there's no other questions, we will make these changes and bring them back in the March meeting.
Let's see if it passes.
Your campaign button's made. You got time.
What are you running?
Fire.
That's a lot of headaches, so we appreciate that you're going through all this, so thank you.
I'm gonna be really excited when it's like, yeah, in place. We're getting close. I can see the
Well,
light.
I'll be excited when we have a mess to look at and go, oh, this didn't work.
My favorite boss used to say, a lot of really good ideas get implemented badly. They didn't want to hurt your feeling that it didn't go well. It's a good idea.
It can be a bad idea that gets implemented well. This is.
We're gonna move on to funding.
Hey, Dan, I
Yeah.
just have a quick question. Hi, COC board. I just wanted to double check to see if there is currently an equity committee. I know that throughout the Bay Area, when I worked with Home First and certain organizations out there, they had like a equity community for persons of color to be also included, and it helped with their diversity, equity, and inclusion goals of the board as well.
There's currently not an equity committee defined or developed in the governance charter. That doesn't mean that that conversation doesn't take place in each one of the meetings, but an individual committee, there is not one right now.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if COC of Mendocino would be interested in that. just because I know that the community is vastly of a white community, but second to that is the Latin community. And so I just wanted to see if that would be a possibility for the future.
How do we do that? Because I'm really interested in that.
So,
Thank you, Camille.
yes,
And
thank you
of
for
course,
your-
I would love, and of course, I'd love to be on it too, as a person of color.
and a member of our COC. I didn't see you sneak in there. So Camille is a member. My thought behind that, kind of the way I've envisioned it is our first approach is to establish a lived experience board. And then from that lived experience board, gathering things that are of importance, identifying things that are of importance to people who have or are experiencing homelessness. And I know on the forefront, one of those things is racial equity and other areas. So that's kind of the way I see it progressing within our local community. Yeah.
But to answer your question, we would just make the changes needed to the governance charter and reset that standing committees as a board.
Is that something we want to explore?
We can look at it.
Okay.
I mean, I have no problems with the racial equity committee.
Right.
I just don't know how much more changes in the board governance charter. I don't remember if are they defined in the governance charter?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, if we're doing governance charter changes, it doesn't hurt to set up another standing committee.
I think it would be very important, and I think equity, we're talking about equity in general, and I think it's actually like not waiting for a lived experience board. I think this is a topic that filters into everything that we're doing. So I really appreciate that you brought that up. I wasn't even considering that. So I think it's really relevant, so.
We can make those changes for
Yeah.
March.
Thank you, Dan. I think the only thing that, or the only reason why a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion board was like established in those COCs was to ensure that it's not just written on paper, that it was also implemented and somewhat, proctored by a community or a committee, sorry, to ensure that it was lived out. So I just wanted to ensure that and just bring that up as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
And sorry, I have to say one more thing. I apologize, but that actually makes me feel better about the changes that we're gonna vote on here, where we're going into a more representative group seat, because then we're not having these designated spots for different people like LGBTQ and Latinx. So I think it's really relevant,
Yeah.
especially around the changes here.
I think, can I just say, I mean, we have them there, but what are we doing in terms of like doing outreach to get those people here?
Yeah.
So I think we have to be more thoughtful about that. So like, you have tribal government entity, but what are we doing to really get their participation and want them to be here and feel like they're being heard and that they're, that it makes a difference.
That's a
So
good plan.
like it has to be in everything that we
Yeah.
do and our thoughts.
I agree.
Thank you. You sound like the professor from my Harvard Extension School in organizational industrial psychology, where she's like saying the same exact thing. Thank you so much.
You have another job out there for you.
So is the direction to, what's going on?
We're gonna create another committee.
Okay.
We can vote on it.
And we will vote
In
on
March?
In March.
Okay.
I got it.
No, I'm totally on board. I just want to remind you again that our participation in committees has not been great. And so as we add more committees, I'd like to encourage people not to forget the existing committees and still show up for those.
Yeah.
Because that's, and I'm encouraged that actually it seems like we're kind of getting some momentum again, which is really good.
My hope, and I think part of our discussion around this board is to move away from having a board that does all the work.
Yeah.
To having committees that do all the work. So people are really like, oh, I don't care about being on the board. I want to go to the committees. Because that's where the work happens.
I think I also,
That's my hope. Because we can't accomplish much with this big of a group.
along those same lines, and I don't want this to come out off the wrong way, but one of the barriers to doing committee work has been the complexity of continually having to operate under the Brown Act. So I like what the Coordinated Entry Committee did in having quarterly official meetings. I think that could really balance the public's access to information, but not create things too burdensome for staff, because I'm trying to protect the only, the little bit of staff we have.
I think the trick to there is then you have, then for those like the full committee meetings, you have official representatives that are, that then on the work groups, you have, anyway, you still end up with some quorum issues around the work groups that could.
The work groups are not Brown Act required, that was my understanding.
But the committees are, and
But
so if the
the board can
majority of the committees are at a work group meeting.
What do you mean?
So, okay, so like right now, our governing board, we have to be mindful that when we go to a committee meeting, there isn't a quorum of the governing board at that committee
Oh, I see what
meeting.
you mean.
Right.
And so then at a committee meeting, if you
Okay.
then set up a work group, you can't have a quorum of the committee voting members at the work group meeting. It's just nuances around the Brown Act. Brown Act makes it really hard to function.
Can I ask this group along the same, and again, I feel like I'm giving the wrong impression here, but Veronica and I have learned that some COCs don't believe that they're subject to the Brown Act and don't operate under the Brown Act. And we kind of noted that and just moved on. But is that something the board would like us to request more clarification, a legal opinion on, or leave it alone?
We've gotten legal from Mendocino County and it's very strongly in the, we are the Brown Act. Sorry, so sad, too bad.
It was a couple years ago.
Mendocino County Legal Counsel.
But where did Mo go?
Yeah.
Well, there is it being reviewed because we're not the only people complaining. So I keep.
I will
Overall, the
double
Brown
check.
Act makes it possible to do.
I will double check again, but I've lost more than enough posterior Brown Act complaints. So I will double check one more time with like current legal counsel and get some other opinions from county executives.
Like when it'd be.
No.
It's a state law, so.
State law.
And it does seem like different
County to
communities interpret it
county.
differently.
But I will ask you again, but I.
I'll be right back.
On the phone with both legal counsel and unnamed supervisors about Brown Act issues. That's better for time I ended up right here in the chair seat.
Oh, that's cool.
with some reason.
And I'm not saying we definitely, I mean, there's benefits to being a Brown Act committee. It is more transparent. It does create that important access for the public, but it does also create complications that sometimes slow things down.
We'll double check again. So then we're gonna act like we are.
Yeah, no, we need
Brown
to.
Act.
Well, and I just also want to say that, you know, if it's then the requirement of the person that's the board member filling that seat to participate in two different committees on top of their regular work, as well as provide an additional staff for the point in time count, I will not be able to do that.
Two seems like a lot to me.
That commitment for me is too much. I'm just gonna put out
Yeah.
there.
No, it's good that you're communicating that. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good to have people feel comfortable speaking up. Since you're probably not the only person, so.
I'll work on the details.
Well, again, I'm just thinking workload. So it sounds like in March, we're bringing back the governance charter changes for language changes, plus potentially adding an equity committee. And we mean to make clear what the expectations are of board members.
I think.
Is there any way we
expectations-
can bring sort of a draft, do you think, in February? Is that too ambitious for us?
That's too ambitious.
Okay, okay. I was just trying to give them enough room.
All
All right, forget it. Sorry. Move on.
Always the end of February, but still.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna go on to funding. Veronica, do you want to update us on the HF? I know we're working on round 4.
Yeah. So, like Dan said, I'm actively working on contracts. I started first with the operating subsidy requests because I think all of them were to operate emergency shelters, or emergency shelter projects. So those negotiations are underway. I've made contact with our rapid rehousing, identified providers, as well as some of the others to let them know it's coming. But some of them don't have established projects yet. So I'm kind of going in the order of necessity for active clients. So One question I wanted a little direction from the membership on is, would you like us to bring those contracts to the COC board for approval? Or do you want me to make updates to let you know what's going on?
Well, it had to go through county procurement process because we were going to combine, right?
Yes. So it went through the procurement process. It was voted on by a panel that was half COC members and half county staff, social services staff. And so it went through the procurement process. The board approved the amount and the time frame for each contract. And so that's, I'm wondering how far.
I don't think the board has any, even if we had objections to the contracts, county council's not gonna change it just on our objections, so.
Well, when I write out the scope of work and the, how the budget is actually, how the money is used. There's like, maybe you said 150,000 approved, but how they use that 150,000, there's some guidance from the committee that we're following. But there's no actual, just the COC isn't double checking that and coming back on that. So I'm wondering if you want that feedback loop to come back one more time.
I mean, I have no problem as the chair looking at it, but I don't.
I don't know if it's necessary.
I don't think it's really necessary.
We did it for cash.
But if,
And that's.
if you want to, that's also okay.
So it was an expectation then, but your expectations may have seemed to have changed. And I just want to verify that before we move forward with these contracts.
My opinion is that if it's follows the intent of the budgets that went through approval for the committee. Through the ranking and rating solutions, and it follows that in good spirit. I don't think there's a need for us to have more input on it as a board.
Yeah, I think it would just be like a board vote of almost like rubber stamping what it already.
Sure.
If you need that.
I don't need it. Okay. I'm wondering if you want it before it goes to the Board of Supervisors.
But we see that, or is that a person?
It was
Another funding.
Yeah.
I just want
2018.
dumb questions.
Sorry, it's on the list.
Okay.
Is the question around this is funds that are both county and COC? And because obviously the county board has to vote on them.
They do.
And review them.
They're over.
If they were only COC, I would expect the COC to bring reviewing the contracts and approving the contracts, not
But
just
they're
the
joint.
funding, but they're joint. I
So
don't see why I mean, it seems weird for the COC not to provide oversight and approval of the contracts.
Is there a
I think you can look at it two ways though. I mean, the COC should be providing policy direction, not necessarily, and it is a little awkward for the COC to approve the details of a contract that you negotiated with that contractor. Many of you are, if you had an expectation of one contract, your contract might be right behind it. So if you were like, I think that the indirect rate should only be 12% for this client, and your contract also would likely fall into that. I found that when we get really detailed with people who likely are being funded, it brings up some questions. But I think it's super important for the COC to dictate to be involved in the review process and the overall
And that's where I felt like the ranking and rating team did a really good thorough job of looking at those specific contracts and before they're drawn up of like what we felt that those programs needed to expand upon in their contract or get more clarity around. And then I think beyond that, I don't necessarily think that those nitty-gritty conversations have to come to this level again.
I agree with that. The only thing I could see coming up is if there was stuff that's wanting to get put in the contract that is out of alignment with things with like COC goals and strategy, that because it is county driven, and this is where it gets to be kind of sticky, is if things don't align, I think there's an opportunity there for a conversation around how do we help things align better. But I don't, if no one is
Well,
seeing that, then.
I agree there'd be a conversation point around that, but what are we gonna hold up the funding for our
That's what I was saying.
members?
Supposed to
Because we wanna
start
get in
January
an argument with the county?
And I don't see that happening here, like, I don't think that's happening, just as a, I'm more on the like procedural. What
I
kind of
think,
process do we
yeah.
wanna have as a COC? We haven't been in the practice of having funds to contract out the way that we have been in the last couple of
And-
years,
and
and
frank-
so we're
yeah.
setting some precedent right now in terms of how the COC functions as a funder.
I think it's also complicated. I mean, I understand the state's intention of having the county and COC handle things jointly, but it does make things complicated. I mean, and it does, for me, it kind of, that balance of power has been hard to juggle. I will say, in the county's defense, they have really turned this over to the COC in terms of this whole bucket of money. So I am cognizant of that there has been very little interference or even weighing in, frankly, from the county side. And so we're not in that situation where the county, whoever we're talking, has been like dictating everything yet. But the thought is, how do we balance that if that becomes an issue? Or, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know how people do this well, because it seems like it could really go south. It hasn't yet, but it seems like it could.
Good. Any questions on HAP that I didn't address?
Is there around 5?
I guess. But maybe just to Sage's point, I would suggest that if a contractor is being asked, if the expectations of a contractor feel like they're out of alignment with the COC, I think it would be appropriate for them to bring that question to the COC board to consider. Would that?
Yeah, but it's not gonna change that immediate contract.
No, and contracts can always be amended, but I mean, like, if they felt like something was out of alignment with what the COC had requested, I think their course of action is at any point along the contract development process, either before it's approved or after it's approved, they could bring it to the COC and say, I'm struggling with this expectation that are not in alignment.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the first round that we had the HEAP where we were trying to figure out that funding and how we were getting that out. That then had the board members concerned about the Brown Act, right? And the transparency of those funds and who was being selected for those funds. So that kind of all came around at the same time. So I do think that it would be important for us to have like a protocol in place that if and when that came up, that it doesn't get
Gets out of hand.
or, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need help with the HAP 5 application. It's due at the end of March. And there's a giant
Obnoxious.
action plan that we have to do.
It's on my desk.
Do we want to do a strategic planning committee specifically for that?
It's gonna have to involve county stuff too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we can schedule one outside of it. I mean,
Yeah, we can schedule one outside of this,
Okay, we will work on that.
because it's gonna involve planning and building, and it was pretty comprehensive, it's actually.
Yes, and I don't know how to call that meeting, so I'll be leaning on you two.
I'll call it. We can talk outside of this, we do, on the strategic planning group.
But that way the membership knows there is. Okay.
There's no updates on the following one. Is there any projects anybody wants to announce? Projects?
I have one.
Go ahead.
We just accepted an offer of tribal technical assistant from HCD. And so I'm gonna be working with Setha Reddy and Ashley Kerr, who are active ESG like TA providers for several of our tribal ESG recipients, including Northern Circle Indian Housing Authority. And so I wanted the group to be aware that we're gonna be. It's an offer of assistance to help us further our HAP goals of exploring homelessness among people who identify as Native American.
There are a lot of acronyms in there that I didn't.
Oh.
And I'm probably not the only one, especially with anybody
Yes.
listening, so it's
Yes.
helpful to like,
So-
sorry.
I've accepted tribal technical assistance, TTA, from the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. The two identified TA providers, technical assistance providers, have been working through the Emergency Solutions Grant through the CARES Act. That was or the grantees, the tribal grantees in Mendocino County of that grant. Is that better?
It's way better.
Thank you.
I call it the acronym stew.
It's a soup. That's awesome.
Any other announcements?
I have an announcement. Ford Street's Ukiah Recovery Center is transitioning its sober living environment to be completely utilized for withdrawal management effective February 1st. And so the public health crisis we're having with overdose has created the need where we're kind of going beyond wait list issues with trying to get people into withdrawal management. So we are literally adding those 18 beds.
Is that a detox?
Yeah, detox.
Is it medical?
It's what you said, yeah.
Medical detox?
It's no, we're social detox. And so when we're backed up, because right now we only have 6 beds, those people end up at the ERs, which, you know, for the folks that don't need medical detox, that's another issue and another concern. So given that we weren't unable to attain the funding to build the additional new sober living, my folks are getting between 5 and 15 calls a day. I mean,
What's happening with the folks that are in the SLE?
so we've communicated with them. We're working with trying to get them housing options. And I have to say, because we've been working on this for 8 weeks, we've been somewhat, successful. But the folks that are, we have a contract with probation. And that's a challenging population to find this kind of housing for. And that's gonna always remain challenging, but that's what our plan is doing. We were hesitant to, put the stake in the ground and say February 1st, because the state has to come and look at the facility. We're already licensed for the building right next door, so we don't anticipate that they're gonna find any issues with it, but they have promised to be here in time to get all that done, and have already sent me the bill for the additional charge for my license. So I thought that was a good sign. But again, right now, our community needs this additional.
So Jackie, can
Yeah.
you describe what a social detox is?
So we are
Sounds
like,
friendly.
yeah. Come throw up and have diarrhea with us. We will take care of you.
But it doesn't last for how long?
Oh, most stays are 5 days, and
But they
and-
can't go into a URC after that because.
they can if they
You haven't-
ask, you'll
have enough.
well, we've all, about half the people that would come in and say they didn't want to go into residential treatment, by the time they get through what we call social detox, they would ask. I remember, we don't always make the best decisions when we're loaded. That's my tip of the day, kids. So, we've seen this, it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and we planned for it even before the overdose crisis hit, and it's just really kind of outstripped. So what my folks do, they're we call them client services people.
Mhm.
They literally are checking on folks for the first 3 days, every 30 minutes.
Wow.
And so, and again, people are ill and so we try and create a quiet, safe place for them to go through that.
So you're kind of just, because you were already providing that service in your,
Right.
so you're really just
Right.
expanding your beds.
Right.
For,
So the 6 beds that we had in the current residential treatment building, we now will have 6 more residential treatment beds and
Oh,
we'll
I
just
see.
have the 18. So it did give us a few more beds
For treatment.
for treatment. And it triples the number of folks that we can help through detox. I wanted to say that, the state and partnership, these are usually drug Medi-Cal people. They set that 5-day stay, because that was really what it looked like. With people using alcohol and drugs, sometimes we have to call and say,
We need
we need a little bit more time. But again, and the other thing about a social model is if you come in 3 days, you're feeling better, you can get up and walk away and my staff's not gonna chase you down and have you come back for 2 days. So this is really, probably the lowest tier. But also that choice as adults, we like. I mean, we will have people go through detox 2 or 3 times in a 3-month period and kind of feel like this just may be where we are. And the next time they come, they want, so that's why we can't give up and we can't stop what we're doing and we gotta be there. And so February 1st, we will make
The
that
transition.
transition. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Mhm.
maybe if we could meet to try to find some gap funding, that's like a big project we've been trying to do on our own for a long time. We got DCSS funding for that. We also got HAP that we never even touched yet. That we're trying to find the projects for, the help fund. I know I talked to somebody over at, I think it's Behavioral Health over there. And they're like, man, you should do that. Nobody reaches out to the tribes. And maybe that's where it's gonna.
We don't to all tribes. We have several contracts with a couple. If you looked at how we pay for our program, 80 to 85% comes from drug Medi-Cal.
Right.
And the
partnership,
others, the other comes from tribes.
Right.
Jackie, how many people in sober living will be exited?
I think we're down to probably 6 or 7 now. With the probation, I love Eisen and his team, but we could still use them just for short stays, right? And I'm like, yeah, but don't think I can find them permanent
Right.
supportive housing in 3 days. But so I think we're having a bit of a
So it may not be a hard exit, but they
right. There's nobody coming in now that doesn't understand on the end of January, they have to not be there so we can do conversions.
Jackie, I just had one last question. So in order for you to admit them, do they have to have medical clearance?
So that's why, we love the ERs, they get cleared. And that I love that my team, you can have somebody call our team and we can see if you qualify for partnership. But you have to see a physician and it's usually an ER doc to make sure that you are able to do social detox.
Yeah.
Because there are people that say, I'm fine. And they get to the ER and they have hypertension or they have an issue that it would be risky business.
Yeah.
The other thing is we're so lucky that the ER is so close. There unforeseen things happen. And so somebody that seems fine, but the second day their blood pressure goes up, we can call and get them back over there. And so I'm grateful that we're in the neighborhood and they're on the other end of the phone all the time. I think there's probably people we've saved them more torture or even their lives because of that partnership. But it is so hard for us to let go of sober living. It's a regret.
It's letting go of the dream that started it.
Yeah, so I haven't given up on it, but I'm just too pissed to look at the, look for more money right now. We'll get through this, this transition and, you know, create the headroom we need to care for more people. And then we'll have to go back after it.
Is it a total of 18 beds now, or is it 24?
We're only gonna use 18 because we've taken the smaller funny pod and that's where all the staff will be there.
Okay.
You know, as a part of the, checking on everybody, we had to create a little home for all those, the happy wandering, checking on people. Yeah.
And so, the referral paths will be through the emergency room?
So if people need withdrawal management or residential, if they need just residential treatment. And they can call the recovery center and we can hook them up. Most people need some withdrawal management. So if they call us and we qualify for them and we tell them go to the ER and we call the ER, that's the fastest way. And then the hardship right now that my team is going through is there are times when we really need to take the person that's finally asking for help, that has refused help repeatedly, and we have to say we can't take you till next week Thursday or something. You know, it's just, that's the part that's.
And that
keeping us
window
up
of
at
time
night.
is so critical from asking for help
You
versus
gotta
next
be
week.
right there with the help when they say, I want the help.
Thank
So-
you.
Thanks, Jackie.
Just a reminder, we're accepting nominations always for seats, so.
Oh, yeah, let's take that off.
Any other announcements? If not, the next board meeting will be on February 26th at 1:30 here in this room.
Cool.
I think it's sort of. That was fun.
Like, a little break.